we'll jet back into the Joplin Tornado. So we're going to change it up a bit this time. We're going to start off with the final clip, the aftermath of the storm, and then I'll pick back up and we'll finish off.
Sounds good to me.
There are people that have got to be injured right now, Josh. There are probably people, fatalities right now. People are trapped in buildings. There are buildings missing, Josh, that used to be here. They're totally gone.
This is bad.
Oh my gosh.
This is bad. Dan.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, are you talking to Kevin? What do you want?
I don't know where
I don't know.
Walking around.
I don't know.
Look at that. That is destroyed completely.
We're gonna turn around, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Can you get through that way? 20th?
See, on the end, right there with the bullet. Watch out for those. See where that room's gone? Right above. Right here. See the bus window? No, over. Right above. Well, no, that room that's right above. That was my dad's room. And then the room that's completely gone.
I cannot believe this. Pulled a lady out with a broken back.
Broadcasting live from the darkened KZRG 24-hour storm center. Power is out. We are running on backup generators at this hour.
I understand clear. I got calls from the station that the hospitals were hit earlier. I'm trying to get to that side of town. They're just people, Josh, stunned. They're standing, sobbing on the...
A woman was reportedly seen in x-rays in her front yard, and that just gives you a visual to how far this damage is reaching. But if you think this is bad, check out this over here. This is a neighborhood that is completely flattened by this tornado. There are dozens of people walking up and down the street trying to figure out if they're...
We have sustained a major direct hit here in Joplin.
Now, Chad, you've described some damage, and we're trying to understand the situation. And as we can understand it now, Joplin will never be the same after this tornadic event.
And when I was at 24th and Main, I could look all the way to the west and all the way to the east, and I saw no structure standing. And there...
Dylan. Yes. Like, I don't recognize where I'm at right now.
I don't think I believe what I'm seeing right now.
You want to ride somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go over here. I don't know. I don't want to be... Somebody's going to need help.
Do you need help?
Hey, we have pictures.
All right, here's the gas station that we were at. We parked right over there. Our car got blown away, but the front door was just right there.
The Joplin tornado was anywhere from a half mile to 3/4 mile wide at its widest point. It was on the ground for about 13 miles. Approximately 7,500 homes were damaged.
Okay, aftermath and impact of the Joplin tornado. A preliminary survey of the tornado damage by the National Weather Service office in Springfield began on May 23rd, the following day. The initial survey confirmed a violent tornado rated EF4. Damage surveys, however, found evidence of more intense damage as the tornado was upgraded to an EF5 with winds between 225 to 250 miles an hour. This is actually an interesting thing because for some reason, I don't know why, there's a lot of rating disputes on that. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but this seemed to be a common thing where the rating if this thing was actually an EF5 or not, but obviously the damage was crazy. The scope of the damage was immense. According to a local branch of the American Red Cross, about 25% of Joplin was destroyed, though emergency officials reported some level of damage to about 75% of the city. A week after the tornado, Joplin's mayor estimated that 25% of the businesses licensed in the city were damaged or destroyed. 7,964 buildings were damaged in Joplin, including 7,411 residential buildings and 553 non-residential. At least 3,734 of those buildings, including 3,181 are residential buildings, and all 553 non-residential buildings sustained so much damage they were considered destroyed from an insurance standpoint. According to the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, 8,264 homes were impacted, and of those, 3,884 were significantly damaged, and 4,380 were considered destroyed. So this is some damage to the infrastructure of Joplin. The tornado also severely damaged critical infrastructure to the city, hampering emergency response and recovery efforts. We talked about the 2 of the main 3 fire stations were completely destroyed. 2 hospitals both had damage, 1 destroyed, and approximately 4,000 electrical distribution poles were damaged, more than 110 miles of distribution line brought down, 135 transmission towers affected. All the electrical work in the path was basically destroyed. 20,000 people were left without power, and of those home left without power, they didn't get that back till about 10 to 12 days later, which is huge. The cost of rebuilding just the electrical system was calculated to be about $27 million, just the infrastructure of the electricity. The tornado also caused about 4,000 leaks in water service lines, dropping Joplin's water system pressure below operating level. Approximately 3,500 gas meters and 55,000 feet of gas main were damaged, and it took weeks to get to every gas leak, figure out where they're all coming from. Some damaged mains could not be shut off because they were serving in critical facilities like the healthcare systems. The lone remaining hospital in Joplin, obviously, couldn't shut everything off because of you needed it at the hospital. 21 cell phone towers were down and fiber cables damaged. Cellular communications rendered useless, disabling voice calls and texts. Insurance, an early estimate from the catastrophic risk modeling from Equate, placed the insurance losses from the tornado at $3 billion USD. By mid-June, more than 19,000 insurance claims had been filed, a number that eventually rose to 61,000, a total payout for more than $2 billion, 31% going to homeowners, 5% to those who lost vehicles. The impact of the insurance industry was not so much due to the number of claims, but the cumulative effect of such a large number of total losses in those claims. More than 2,500 local people employed in insurance were involved in some capacity. The $2.8 billion in damage is the largest amount for a tornado since 1950. Casualties, we talked about this earlier. The official death toll from the National Weather Service listed at 158, while the city of Joplin listed it at 161. Shortly after the tornado, authorities had listed 1,300 people as missing. The number quickly dwindled down as they were accounted for. Many people were reported to have been trapped in destroyed houses. Nearly 30 people were actually rescued the following day after this tornado that happened at 6 p.m. So the following day, they had been trapped there the whole day. They were rescued. Of the 146 sets of remains recovered from the rubble, 134 victims have been positively identified, so not even all identified. This total number included 4 sets of partial remains, some of which had belonged to the same person. A couple weeks later, they identified 4 more people. Of course, there were people that, vanished in this completely, infants and terrible things like that. The Joplin Globe reported that 54% of the people that were killed died in their residence, 32% died in non-residential areas, and 14% died in vehicles or outdoors. Joplin officials, after the tornado, announced plans to require that they submitted this proposal: hurricane ties or other fasteners between houses of their foundations, something that would cost about $700 per house. Officials rejected this to have these be a requirement in basements, and they also rejected in a proposal of having basements being a requirement in new houses. Officials strangely noted that as of 2009, only 28% of Joplin's new homes had basements, compared to 38% 2 decades before, but it's important to note also that a lot more population increased in that than the previous survey. Injuries range from cuts, bruises, to impalements by large debris. To the conclusion of that, 1,500 people were injured or severely injured enough to seek medical treatment. It also says that they rescued nearly 1,000 pets with 292, almost 300 homeowners. Rating dispute, like I said, the American Society of Civil Engineers and the National Weather Service went back and forwards on if this was an EF4 or EF5. National Weather Service kind of gets the last call here. They do agree with the civil engineers that a lot of the damage was equivalent to EF3, EF4 throughout it, but there was certainly things that happened in several areas, even though they may have been small areas, that were undeniably EF5 if you go off of the capability of it. Example, the manhole cover, what was able to do with impalement. That debate went down as an EF5 when it was all said and done. Yeah, okay, so just to go into that. Concrete being removed, manhole covers, reinforced porches, driveways, asphalt being ripped from the earth, the presence of wind, road structure debris, instances of very large vehicles such as buses, vans, and semi-trucks being thrown hundreds of yards or several blocks from their original points of origin, the fact that some homeowners actually never relocated their vehicles again, and the overwhelming extent and totality of the destruction were also put into consideration to finalize that as an EF5. Here's some facts on the cleanup. The Joplin tornado generated an estimated 3 million cubic yards of debris, an amount sufficient to cover a football field 120 stories high. Removal efforts lasted for months, and at their height, more than 410 trucks a day were removing debris to landfills in Joplin, as well as nearby counties. The tornado also led to a renewed lead contamination on many of Joplin's properties, because if you remember, we went back to the beginning of the story, that's what this area was founded on, lead, and development of that. So the reason it was able to kind of lead to this reoccurring of lead contamination here is because there was a lot of reminiscence of this in underground, trees, foundations, stuff like that, and it was actually uprooted, and they found about 40% of the yards in southern Joplin had been contaminated. Chunks of raw lead were, in some places, they were sitting around the size of tennis balls or golf balls. The city spent more than $5 million just to clean up this lead contamination. They had to get grants to do so. Basically, they had to handle this seriously, removing the lead, cleaning the topsoil, putting new topsoil down. And of course, they had to pass requirements before, like, anything that could be rebuilt had to be tested before it could be. FEMA maintained a large presence after this, following the tornado, with as many as 820 employees working in the city. The city warned by federal officials that it should expect to lose 25% of its population following the tornado. They actually responded pretty quickly, though, and built an average of 5 houses a week between 2011 and 2022. Most businesses reopened, and more than 300 new businesses opened between these last, 12 years. And here's a last interesting fact here. There was some conversation about the mental health impact that it had. There were 20 people, they said, committed suicide in the wake of this, and obviously had a big impact on the mental health for the residents for quite a while. And I'm sure to this day, it's not something that, goes away. Calls about domestic violence grew for the next several years, much higher than they were post this tornado.
That's rough. That is really bad.
Yeah, everybody's saying they need a storm shelter after that. Yeah, that was a lot of debris. They said how many football fields high? 120 stories high. 100 yards wide, 120 stories high.
This just doesn't even make sense,
No, but when you look at the video that we watched, you can see how it would easily be that. Now, I do want to talk about that video a little bit, because it did a good job of grasping the severity of the situation. So the person, a couple people, but one comment really stood out to me. He said, I don't even know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Now, so imagine you went outside right now and everything was just wiped out.
Right.
You wouldn't know where you're at. There's no street signs. There's no structures standing.
Right. Yeah.
How would you know where you're actually at?
Yeah, that is crazy. One thing you were talking about there was they thought about passing like the requirement to have hurricane ties to prevent debris and stuff like that, and it'd be like $700 per building. when he said that, I was like, man, hurricane ties. I know what those are. What are those? I looked it up while you were reading. I bought these things for my shed for the rafters. They're $1 a piece.
Yeah, I don't know. It says to the foundation. I don't know what all that consists of.
They're for, you can use it for like basically everything, but basically tying it in a certain way to something else to just prevent it from flying off. And yeah, it ties like the floor joists to the foundation or the rafters to the frame. How cheap can you be to, to not...
They tried to also go as extreme, and you can call it extreme or not extreme, as to make it where you had to have a basement in any new house. That didn't get passed. I'm not surprised. That's
a significant increase.
But makes you see why in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, they have much more strict requirements on building codes and much higher rate of shelters. So interesting enough here also, the number of basements being put in new homes actually decreased from the 2 decades prior. What do you think that is? When I looked at it, I thought it was probably because of a pretty booming population. So building a lot of homes just didn't put basements in them.
Yeah. Oh, jeez, so much to unpack there. It's just weird that, they wouldn't... There are some things that make sense to add in. And something like hurricane ties, cheap add for future buildings, that should have been a requirement after that.
You talk about how this compares to a hurricane. That's like...
It's like 80, 90 mile an hour winds.
Well, no. But, okay, so there's nothing with that powerful in the world as a tornado that we just talked about. It's the equivalent of a bomb, atomic bomb. But the problem with a hurricane is its sustained winds can last 24 hours, can last 12 hours, which makes it very deadly, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this and that's how you count the surge.
Right. Yeah. But this event is quick, this tornado, when a tornado happens. But I think this is so scary to me because you're really powerless. You can get these hurricane ties and stuff, but from the way it looked at some of these neighborhoods, they're just all wiped out.
There was no stopping that. I think the idea is to prevent flying debris.
Exactly. No, you're right, because that becomes the most dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And they talked about all the different number of people that went to the hospital with impalement. And when I was editing a lot of this footage, there was a nurse talking about some of the different things she saw that were stuck in people. It was terrifying.
Can't imagine.
Just from the wind. Different vibe tonight on your scary stories, but a truly terrifying story. And I have never seen a tornado.
You never been in one?
What'd you say?
You say you never been in one?
I've never actually seen one either. I've been about 4 miles away from one when I was in southern Indiana, but I didn't see it. And it was an EF1 or 2. It was not like this, obviously.
There was this one time, I'm not 100% certain there was a tornado. It probably wasn't. They never officially said it was. But I was in the restaurant, and the roof got peeled off the top. And I do know for a fact that I felt like the windows were going to explode at one point. And so, it may have just been a straight line wind that was just out of control.
Yeah.
Or it was like a low-level tornado that touched down for a split second and then ripped it off and it went away. But yeah, this is like what we just saw is like hand of God level.
How many miles? How long was this thing? Gosh.
It said it was touchdown at a mile wide for about 16 miles of going across.
Absolutely.
And you said earlier it was going at 10 miles an hour.
At one point, it was going 10 miles an hour, which is slow.
So that was like almost an hour or something like that it was going through that area.
Yeah. So aerial surveys, when you go back, and they showed that there at the end of that video, are insane. A drone, a helicopter, whatever you want to look at it with. 21 miles long and up to a mile wide. This thing stayed on the ground for 21 miles. And you go back to earlier, first part of this, you actually got to see it develop on camera, which I don't want to say was pretty cool, but it went from like a normal tornado to this, like you said, an act of God, this monster in seconds.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. Yeah, I've seen some footage before, but I never saw all that, like aftermath or anything like that, or even like the during of it. And some of that footage there was just absolutely terrifying to look at, and just it makes you feel bad watching it, but it also makes you count your blessings that you're not there.
Yeah. A lot of people said that they referred to what the scene that they saw was people walking like zombies down the street with a few possessions they found.
I could see that.
What did you think about the infrastructure, how it mentioned that? That's something I guess you don't typically think about, right? When you think about tornado.
All those gas lines and everything that are ruptured and everything.
Water, gas, and electrical. It just decimated the electrical infrastructure in that town.
I mean, it's stuff like that.
110 miles of distribution power line.
Yeah, stuff like that takes forever to fix. And so that being destroyed, that also slows down the repairs, right? Because if you don't have access to power to do things, you can't fix things. Not today.
There was a lot of people when I researched this that were talking about how they were they were out of town and they were trying to get back home into Joplin after this. One, they didn't know where they're at. There's no street signs, and that's something you kind of take for granted when you don't have anything to reference. And two, there was so much debris you couldn't even get to your house.
Yeah.
People talked about parking half a mile away and walking there.
You don't even know where you're going to walk to.
Well, and that one that guy said when he looked in two different directions, there was nothing.
Yeah. And then they show that neighborhood outside the hospital.
Gone.
Gone. It's like there's nothing to go back to. It's gone, and that is insanity to me. It's like you think about it, it's like what would you even do? Like, can you process that? That's why I'm not surprised at like they said, the increase in suicides and stuff like that.
Yeah,
stuff like that takes a toll on human beings that is just hard to quantify. And it's like being at war. It's like you said, a bomb.
Yeah. That's why everybody kept saying it's like a bomb destroyed everything. There was what did you think about the Pizza Hut manager that was killed? That's terrifying, right? You can see like trying to get everybody into a safe place.
That was actually a really sad part. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, walk-ins I've been in, and it's like they're pretty structurally sound. Usually they're a good place to put people.
They have walls in the middle of the place. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. But they are only so big. And so, you try to save everybody, and you're not going to have that kind of room.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen a walk-in that could fit the amount of people he was trying to put in there.
One story I heard, and I didn't play it, share it was incredibly sad. Your sad stories tonight was they were looking for their baby, and there's so many random sounds, toys going off, it's about impossible to locate anything, so they weren't able to. But another interesting thing come from this was what it did to the animals that were there, the horses, the cows.
Yeah.
They would just say you could hear shots in the distance, just some of them couldn't be saved. They were so badly hurt. But it's like just so much of an impact that you never think about. That's why I thought, like, this is sad, as tragic as can be. And kudos to this community. It sounds like they're strong as hell, and they've made a big comeback.
Yeah.
But it's sad. But more than anything, it's scary. Like, this could happen where I'm at in Indiana. This could happen where you're at. This could happen at a lot of places. But there's just nothing that prepares you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of want to go there sometime just to see what kind of a community can rebound from something like that.
There's obviously some things will never be replaced for the lives lost and all that.
Yeah, you can never replace that. And nothing will ever go back to being the exact same. It's just a new normal now. And they're definitely making a go of it, though.
It's important to note also that there has to be a learning experience from this, because way too many people died. I mean,
Yeah.
that is an abnormal, insane. This was an abnormal and insane storm, but that is a very large amount of fatalities.
Yeah.
So you hope, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that were taken away from this. I watch a lot of air crash investigators, airplanes. Something comes out of every crash, right? A regulation, a finding. You just hope that in this particular instance that something would come out of that, because we talked about Oklahoma City. They have had several EF5s,
Right.
but not this fatality level typically. I mean, I could be speaking out of my mind. There's some big ones, but with a 20-minute warning, which is pretty sufficient. However, it's scary because there's just nothing you could do. You could hope you drove the right way, I guess. You could try to drive away fast. It wasn't a very fast-moving storm. It was between 40 and 10 miles an hour. You got to think about it, though. I'm sure, and I know a lot of other tornado stories, the roads, first of all, if you're behind the 8 ball, you can't get around the debris. But everybody trying to leave at the same time is problematic, too.
When it's something like that, there's just no real good answer.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?